name's Ashley Garcia, and I'm going to be discussing the discussion questions for Chapter 1. I am going to be looking to the right because I kind of made a script for the key points that I need to address in order to answer all the questions. So the first question is, according to the text, why is studying intercultural communication important? To answer this question, I'd cite page 22 of the textbook. It states that we receive personal empowerment because of studying intercultural, that is a hard word, communication. Knowledge is power, and as we learn, we know that there are other ways to look at the world around us. The feeling of empowerment comes from knowledge of the differing cultures. I know for myself that when I'm knowledgeable about something, a situation or conversation, like when I'm in a situation or a conversation, a sort of light bulb goes off in my brain and my eyes light up and I'm excited to share that knowledge I have with those around me, and it even gives me a sense of pride knowing that I can contribute in such a drastic and scholarly way to a situation or a conversation. The situations that may require intercultural communication, I believe this question's way too broad to narrow down. There are millions of situations that may require intercultural communication, but for me, those situations can be like going to my mother-in-law's home and interacting with my husband's side of the family since he's Hispanic, visiting back in Texas where I'm from and interacting with those at the local grocery stores, again of Hispanic origin since I used to live in the Rio Grande Valley. And finally, another situation I've recently had is an encounter on an airplane with a man who lived in Germany until the age of 18. There was a huge cultural gap there, and not realizing it, I perceived him to be rude or dismissive, when ultimately he was extremely nice and even helped me with my daughter by giving her stickers to keep her entertained. And the last portion of the first question is, what benefits can come out of interactions with those from different cultures? So I believe this question can be continued from the original question in number 1, why we study intercultural communication. To continue with that idea, page 22 of the textbook states that we gain freedom from ignorance. And it's a huge benefit from studying intercultural communication because then we're free to make choices that allow us to act both effectively and appropriate in our daily lives. And that's also from page 22. Having this freedom from ignorance allows us to partake in effective and productive conversations with those around us. It's extremely beneficial because when you get down to the basics, it allows us to coexist in not only an efficient and productive way, but we see the world through different eyes and cultures, and we can even work together for the greater good. Going on to question 2, considering the text, in what ways does the definition of culture fit or not fit with the one that you had in your own mind before reading this chapter? So for me, the definition of culture fits, but it doesn't fit with the definition that I had in mind. The textbook defines culture on page 4 as a historically shared system of symbolic resources through which we make our world meaningful. And it fits my original description of culture because it explains the usage of symbolic resources such as the Bible in a Christian culture or the American flag in the American culture, but it doesn't fit my original description because I used to categorize culture into certain areas, whereas it's more fluid. For example, just because I married a Mexican male doesn't mean that he has the same cultural standards as his dad. For example, his dad is very typical in a married relationship. For Mexican culture, he believes the woman cooks and stays home and the children while the man goes to work. But this is not true for all Mexican males. My husband believes marriage is 50-50 and therefore he cannot be categorized with that culture. Basically, I used to say a lot of people that seem to be in the same group are alike, but in reality, we all have our own cultural backgrounds and beliefs that we use symbolic resources through. The second part of that question is, why are some communities perceived as having more culture than others? I believe some communities are perceived as having more cultures than others because they're more widely known and talked about. The Southern culture of America is categorized as homey, welcoming, and traditional, and is exaggerated in movies and television. And because of the media usage to over-exaggerate culture, we as Americans are perceived to have more cultures than others, in my opinion. Some communities have just have more culture? That's part 3 of question 2. I don't believe some communities have more culture than others. I believe after reading the chapter that culture is unique to each individual and what they partake in. In the media, has the tendency to over-exaggerate existing cultures, and therefore we perceive some as having more than others, where I think all communities just simply have their own set of ever-changing culture. Number 3, after reading and thinking through the text, if a culture provides a system for making sense, how many of these systems can one person use? What cultures do I belong to, and how are they similar to each other, different, and how do I resolve any conflicts between these different systems? So my answer for this one is the textbook on page 4 states that we are surrounded by systems. There's a legal system, the educational system, solar system, and the parking system at your school, to name just a few. And all of these systems are used to make sense of the world around us. They give us a system to follow in court, requirements for graduation, and basically just a way to make sense of what is around us. I believe one person can use countless systems, but most importantly, they can even use multiple systems at a time. I like to believe I belong to a Christian and American culture. They're similar in so many ways, but mostly they want to bring meaning to something. For example, the American culture brings meaning to freedom, and the Christian culture brings meaning to life. They are different from each other in some cases by the literal terms of who's in charge. In the Christian culture, God or Jesus helps us through our everyday tasks, and we are dependent on Him, whereas the American culture is about independence, and we are in charge of our own freedoms and have our own rights in accordance with the legal system. We can resolve the conflicts by either coexisting in both or coming to an agree to disagree type of situation. According to the text, question 4, can we ever not communicate? What does it mean for someone to say there was just no communication happening in that meeting? The short answer to this question is no, we can't ever not communicate. We are always communicating by body language, verbal communication, or simply by having no communication at all. We're portraying to others a meaning or feeling that is understood by either one party or both, and ignoring someone is even, in my opinion, a form of communication. According to the textbook on page 16, excuse me, this phrase means that the type of communication that has taken place is not valued positively by those making these comments. Excuse me. I'm going to pause so I can take a drink. Okay. Had an itch in my throat. Number 5, based on your read of the text, if communication is interdependent, to what extent are we responsible for the outcome of any particular interaction with which we are involved? Think of a specific experience and explain how each of the participants influenced how it turned out. So on page 17 of the textbook, it states, this impact is not so much A causing B, but A and B influencing each other's choices continually and often without conscious recognition. This piece of text shows me that we're at a 50-50 responsibility in each conversation we have. Each party is equally responsible for their part in the conversation, and I'd like to reference my flight again with the German man who sat down next to me with body language appearing to be mean and rude. I misjudged him by relying on my own cultural background and proceeded to apologize later on during the flight for my daughter's behavior. He then proceeded to pull stickers out of his backpack to entertain her, and I asked him about his accent. We continued on with the conversation, and he explained that he came from Germany when he was 18 years old and was only 20 now, so he's still learning a lot about our own cultures. Both my ability to reach out to him past his body language and my assumptions, and his ability to recognize my daughter's struggle with being on flights all day, allowed for a very successful conversation in flight. We both put in 50%, and we ended up having a super successful conversation. So ultimately, those are my answers to the discussion questions. Thank you for listening to my speech today. I hope I did a good job at explaining all of my answers to the questions, but have a great day.